Welcome to the Courage Never Quits podcast, where members of the West Point class of 1986 tell their stories. I'm your host, Paul LaFontaine. As always, the views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and not of West Point, the Army, or any organization. Let's go to the podcast. Edgar Pigott, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, great to be here, Pilaf.
So glad I appreciate your patience getting set up today, and let's get into it. So, where are you now? Because you're 2 hours behind, or you're 2 hours time zone different from the East Coast now. So, where are you located now?
No, it might be coming up that way, but I'm actually in Florida right now.
Yeah, look at that. Okay, great. So you're in Florida. That's what it says on your social media. I always want to check in for a question. Yeah. So you are in Florida, and you're south of Tallahassee, which is your hometown, right?
It is. I left in June of 1982, and I stayed away. Other than occasional visits until June of this year.
You made a triumphant return.
I did. Yeah.
The commemoration of the statue of you in the town square, of course.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's like
that's great.
It's good being home though. It's my sisters have always lived here, so I've always had a connection. But it was good finally getting back. Yeah.
And what is the most noticeable change? Growth, obviously, is what we all see in our hometowns. But what's the most noticeable kind of change of your hometown after all this time?
When I left, there was 2 blinking caution lights, and now the county seat has about 3 or 4 stop lights, and during rush hour, I mean, it will take you forever to get through this little town. They were supposed to make it 4 lanes, 10, 15 years ago. It's still right. 2 lanes. And there's all these subdivisions going in. So it's just a madhouse. I mean, it's kind of funny. We have a Starbucks is going to open in a week or 2.
Hey.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Boy, that's fancy.
Fancy. I tell you, it's a different world completely. When I was growing up, almost all the stores were general stores. I mean,
right,
kind of like on the Waltons, and and there's this one place that's a barbecue joint. So me and this guy from the class of '75 who just moved in from Atlanta, we've been having lunch, and we usually go there. So the first time I described it, I said, "Yes, this used to be my Walmart." It's like where you went to get the groceries, your shoes, your clothes, everything.
We had a place like that in our hometown, gone many years ago. We used to get shoes. Your mom would just take you down there and say, "Well, we'll get shoes and toothpaste." But back then it was all like 3 shelves, not like today. But that's great. Yeah. And so, what was a 1982? What is a guy from Medart, Florida? Is that how you say it, Medart?
Medart's good. Yep.
Yeah. What got you interested in West Point?
Well, Coach Anderson, who was part of Coach Kavanaugh's football staff, came down. Actually, the fall of my junior year, and that's when I first heard about West Point.
Okay.
So I was actually recruited for the football team, and then I got all the literature and everything else like that, and did all the application that I needed to do. And I had this. My guidance counselor was a major in the Florida National Guard.
Yeah.
And once I got appointed, it was like no backing out. Then it was like, "You're going to go to dang West Point. You don't know how good an opportunity this is."
He was the opportunity enforcer.
Yes, he was. He was Art Mainwood. I got to give him a lot of credit. He really. And then he told me, well, when you were talking to Jimmy Jenkins, who was in my plebe company.
Yeah.
When you were talking to him, he was talking about his little hometown. Or county, only having like 2 other graduates or something.
Yeah.
In my county, there was like none. One guy went up there a few years earlier, stayed long enough to get a haircut, and then left on our day. I mean, he left. And the
record your county had made was 1 day. So if you could just make it to the second day, you'd achieve the new record.
I think our main would have killed me because he said, "Nobody's ever going to be able to get an appointment out of this place if you don't make it.
It's all on you, man."
Yeah. So Yeah. So
And so you were an athlete. So you're a tall drink of water if people know you in person. What you're a big football player, I imagine, since that's what they
yeah.
recruited you for.
Yep. Yep. I was a tight end, and actually, it was kind of well, maybe tragic story or something. But so when I went up to West Point, I always wanted to play basketball. That's my favorite sport.
Right.
So I actually tried out for the core squad basketball team,
Yeah.
and I did make it.
Yeah.
And but in the process, I tore ligaments in my ankle. So
Oh, in the
so the
process of
football
going out for the
coaches,
team.
yeah. So the football coaches were really ticked because it was during
Oh boy.
Beast Barracks, when they were having the core squad tryouts.
Oh.
So Coach Anderson, where were you yesterday? Or when I showed up with the cast on my leg, he said, "Where
Ooh.
you been?" And I said,
Ooh.
"I was at basketball tryouts."
Oh boy. Not
Yeah, so
happy.
yeah. So anyway, but it was kind of fun. It's like playing basketball. I got to know the basketball players too. So I knew all the football players, all our classmates that played football, and I knew all our classmates who played basketball too.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
What was it like showing up on our day? Because it sounds like other than your National Guard uh, opportunity enforcer there, you didn't have a whole lot of military background. What was our day like for you?
Well, complete culture shock like everybody. But there was some funny things about me. Even though I'm an athlete, I got pretty good hand-eye coordination. I
Yeah.
have no rhythm whatsoever. So I don't know if you remember the remedial marching folks.
No,
They were getting us all ready for the big parade. Well, there was a few folks that needed remedial marching.
you were the remedial marching group.
Yes, I was. I was a rock marcher. So I remember that. With everything else going on,
What was it about remedial marching? How did that work? I think that's fantastic. So they had to teach you how to hear the drum. What was the?
yeah. Basically, the it was a female cadet. I think her name was Jackson. She was in B2,
Yeah.
an upperclassman in B2. Uh, she her job was to get all us completely lack of rhythm people to actually stay with the drum beat. So yeah, so it
And
was
did you
kind of
pick it
funny,
up?
huh?
Or to this day, do you hear a drum and you can't get that left foot to hit?
Oh, I'm really good. In fact, in G4 I was the training sergeant,
Well,
and
there
we
you go.
won. Yeah, we won the guide on the drill guide on for the semester I was the training sergeant.
What
So
an
I
inspirational story there. You went from the
yeah
remedial marching platoon to winning the guidon.
yeah. So
For
we
you kids at
definitely
home, that's what hard work gets you.
yeah exactly yes
That's great. Good for you.
yeah
And then G2 to start.
no
Sorry, no, no,
G2
no. Yeah,
Bravo 2
Bravo
yeah
2 and then G4. Sorry, I got my letters mixed up. Right. So
yeah.
Bravo 2 to start. How was that as a plebe?
That was one of the I mean, the folks I met there, I still, have been in contact with them. I had great roommates, uh, and uh, and then Jimmy Jenkins was in there too,
Yeah, yeah.
and he was telling you about the Hayes guy. So I sent him an email. He hasn't responded to me, but I think I know who he's talking about because that jerk got me quite a bit too. Yeah, and I think he
Every
didn't like.
company seemed to have one or two.
Oh yeah, but this
To
guy I
this
think
day, you
didn't
talk
like.
about him.
Yeah, this guy was a Southerner, but I don't think he likes Southerners. So I think that's why me
Well,
and
boy,
Jenkins got so good.
that's kind of a pickle if you're from the South and you don't like Southerners, right?
Yeah, I know it's a tough one and everything. Yeah, but
Oh my
no,
goodness.
but
And
one of the
so, but now athletes, because did you make the team to talk? Let's go back to the sports a little bit because
yeah,
you do show in your howitzer both football and basketball
yep. I
in
made both
your
teams.
year.
Yep. In fact, after the football season was over, I was still trying to rehab because I hadn't
Yeah,
recovered or anything. And my tactical officer was good friends with the basketball coach, the JV basketball coach,
sure.
Coach Mixon. So my TAC officer comes in and he says, "Hey, Pigott, what are you doing?" And I was delivering mail. I said, "Sir, I'm delivering mail." He said, "Why aren't you at practice?" And I was like, "Well, sir, I'm not going to play basketball." And then
Hmm.
he said, Pigott, Coach Mixon said that you could help the team.
There you
I
go.
think you need to get down there. So I had to like get the mail to one of my classmates, and I had to go down to the field
There you
house and
go.
practice basketball.
Well, God, an
So
invitation like that you can't beat. So they invited you down to basketball with no real option to say no. It sounds like.
yeah, it wasn't much of an option, but like I said, it turned out to be a great thing too. We got a couple of away games. Like I remember going to the game at Columbia
Yeah.
in New York City on a Saturday night, and I don't know if you that part of the town. There's like all these cars double parked, and we were
Uh-huh.
on this big bus, the charter bus kind of deal, and it was like, how the heck are we going to get out of here? Because all the roads were like, you know, double parked cars everywhere.
Right.
Anyway, all of a sudden this fire engine comes through. And I guess in New York City, in emergencies, fire engines do not stop.
Right.
They go. So our bus followed the fire engine through, and the fire
Oh,
engine was actually throwing cars up onto the,
is that
off the
right?
other way. Yeah.
So it was
Yeah,
knocking the
it
cars
was
out of the
nuts.
way.
Yeah, it was nuts. And then, so we got out of, Columbia's up near Harlem, I think. So we got out and finally got on one of the expressways and got back to West Point. But
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
that was always a memorable
You were in the
evening.
back of the bus. You were in the bus saying, "Boy, this isn't how they do it down in Medart."
No, 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 no. You didn't see much of a traffic jam or something like that.
Your one
So,
traffic light. You didn't have the
no,
double
no.
parking so much down there.
Yeah.
Plebe year, yeah, basketball, football, and then it looks like it kind of ended. What was the transition out of sports for you at the academy?
Well, two things: my GPA and the ligament damages my ankles. It actually took me about 2 or 3 years to. Well,
Really get that right. Yeah.
yeah, actually, I had super weak ankles. I mean, I was turning my ankles left and right for the
Yeah.
next 2 or 3 years. And of course, I didn't want to stop. And being an officer, once you got in the army, of course, you just tighten up your boots tighter and keep
Yeah.
going.
Right.
So
But
yeah,
I mean, ultimately, the goal was to become an Army officer, so you wanted to get your ligaments in order,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
old dean will keep you out of a. The dean's probably kept a few folks out of a nice athletic career.
Yeah, yeah, I yeah,
Well,
it
particularly
was pretty
playing
tough.
two sports. So I mean,
Yeah,
one sport is intense enough, but trying to get two in is kind of tough.
yeah, and there was only two football players first semester in Fortran. It was me and Daryl Londo. I don't know if you remember Daryl
Oh,
Londo.
Daryl, yeah.
He was a defensive back, but I remember I think we were the only two that had to take Fortran first semester. Everybody else got that psych class.
Right.
All the other football players were in that, but we were in Fortran, and the 3 o'clock in the morning and
I
in
took that
Washington
class.
Hall.
That was not a forgiving class.
Oh, it was, and you get your endless do loop at 2 in the morning, and you wasn't going home anytime soon. So yeah. But I remember being in there and seeing
In fact,
Daryl
Ed,
and
it was that class that shifted me out of computer science. That class, that specific class, I just said,
yeah.
"There's no way I'm going to graduate from this place if I'm doing all nighters trying to decode programming." At a time
Hmm.
when decoding programming was a lot harder than it is today,
Yeah,
you couldn't
that
say,
was
"Chat
nuts.
GPT, take me away." Right?
I know. These kids, man, nowadays, it's just amazing.
Oh,
So, but I have used that Chat GPT for a few things. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. If
it
we'd have had it
is
back then, who knew? Who knows what kind of
yeah,
wizardry we would have gotten up to?
definitely.
So, wait. So, why were you guys in Fortran? Was it something? Was your course of study?
No, it was just
Just good
like I
luck.
said. Yeah, I've always had great luck like that. Yeah.
That's
I don't know
crazy.
why, but it was crazy because there was only two of us football players in there. You
Now,
know,
was it you in MSC though?
no, no, actually, no. And when you plebe year, you didn't decide MSc or HSE or whatever it was until after plebe year.
No kidding.
Yeah, I
That
think
is
it was. Yeah,
well. That's really interesting. I didn't. So somehow you got routed into a Fortran class as a plebe.
yep,
Wow, that's exciting. I mean,
yeah,
you're the first one who's been on it. You broke new
yeah,
ground, I guess, or you broke some sort of ground.
yep. And
Anyway,
then,
that
but I
class
also
is no.
had to do a lot of study hall in addition to that because um, coming from a small rural county and everything, I was in rock English.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I I had to go to study hall, the football study hall for that, and I also had
Jimmy, if you recall, Jimmy's conversation was similar, and it's not an unusual phenomenon that different school systems have different levels of
hmm
kind of standards, and so you kind of have to make up some ground there. Yeah.
yeah. It used to, well, Bill Coyle was a cow in B2, and he was assigned as my tutor, and God, he was one of the most sarcastic guys around.
Right.
He said, "Hey, Pike, don't worry. I know you probably went to some backwood school. You probably didn't even wear shoes and all this other." And he'd ride me and everything. He said, "But I'm gonna get you
Hey,
through." And he did. He did. So
I tell you, there's nothing better than a sarcastic tutor. You
yeah, I
know,
know. I
just
know.
you just to really get that self-esteem going.
I know. I know. Yeah, I still remember that guy for that day. I was at a football game and met a class of '84. No, but yeah, 84. And I was like from B2,
Yeah.
and I was saying, yeah. I didn't really remember him too well, but I said, "Hey, you remember Bill Cole?" And he said, "Oh yeah, Billy. We hang out and we still talk and everything." I said, "Oh yeah." So I said, "Yeah, I'll never forget that guy. He rode me the whole semester, but he got me through." So
I'll never forget that guy. Really, really
yeah,
molded me into the man I am
yeah,
today.
yeah,
So G4, he went from B2 to G4. What was and then rotating out of sports? That must have been a huge change to go from
yeah,
being a core squad athlete to sports as a plebe into a completely different company and lifestyle,
yeah,
basically. How'd you find that?
yeah. It was well, like I said, it was interesting. I had a lot more time to kill, so I actually joined the public affairs detail,
Yeah, I
but
saw that.
I didn't do the radio station. But I did. Well, actually, I got to go to quite a few football games on the public affairs detail.
Oh, how about
So
that?
yeah, yeah. So I was still able to hang out with the guys quite a bit. Um, so yes, but getting involved with G4 and everything, it was a great company as well. Great guys. Um,
You guys are
you
back in the
know,
lost 50s on the left-hand side, if I remember right. Is that
oh
right?
yeah, we were, yep. And you know, I always, I think you were talking to somebody about that was in the division style
Yep.
and having the upperclassmen down low.
Yep.
Well, I did have to go down low when I was like a platoon leader or something like that.
Right.
The first year, but the other semester in first year, me and my roommate we decided to take the fifth floor.
Really?
Yeah, because on the fifth floor you left your windows down all winter long.
Huh.
I mean, because it was the radiant heat.
Yeah,
uh,
right.
yeah, from the steam and everything, it would all go up.
Now,
So
was
on
that
the
a
top,
feature? Was that something that you liked?
that was the feature I loved because we would like it would be 20 degrees out and we'd have our windows all the way open. Just because you got this fresh breeze and everything else like
Yeah,
that. So I'm
yeah.
a little weird like that, but so was my roommate. So,
Who's
but
that?
it was
Who's
good.
the roommate?
I think it was John Markovich. Marco.
Markovich. Okay. So you
Yeah.
guys like
Yeah.
that high
Yeah.
living, open
Yeah.
windows, living the
Yeah,
dream is
definitely.
first year.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, we got
Yeah,
the
I
penthouse.
and was it a tough company in terms of discipline and all the rest, or did they kind of leave you alone if you kept your nose clean?
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, we were ferocious guppies. All right. No, yeah,
Is
you're
there any other
mascot.
kind, Ed?
Yeah, that's exactly. The motto was guppies, terrors of the deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's a
yeah,
that's
yeah.
actually a good one. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a
You
good one.
couldn't be that tough, with a guppy as your mascot and
Right,
everything.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, and if you never visited our orderly room or our day room, you
Yeah,
missed a treat. The orderly room was Star Wars themed. I mean, murals all over the wall,
no kidding.
and the day room was Middle Earth, hobbits.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it was
I don't have a
whoever.
lot of regrets, but I think it would have been fun to go back and like go visit, just go to everyone's different company areas,
Yeah.
just poke your head in it, because we all had a very different experience. I mean, you all had the
Mm-hmm.
mountain right behind you,
Yep.
north area, very different experience than we were over in MacArthur Barracks, and some of the folks were over in First Reg, just very different
Yeah.
day
Yeah.
rooms
It
and all
was.
kinds of stuff.
It
That's
was. It was.
interesting. So
It
let
was.
you go.
I really liked that the 3 years there in G4. It was pretty nice. Yeah.
And were you pretty, did you stay out of trouble or did you spend a little time in the area? How did that work for you?
No, it wasn't too bad. I think I did a total of 8 hours or something like that,
Okay. Yeah.
sleeping through classes, something like that. So
Yeah.
nothing,
Just to,
nothing really bad there.
8 hours just to say you've been to the place, right? If you
Oh
didn't
yeah,
do
yeah,
any hours at all, I mean, come on. That's,
yeah. And I
yeah.
think I did them both first a year,
Yeah.
and you sat room tours, so I didn't actually walk the area. But on the room tours, well, the reason I got those, I think I missed classes after. Well, I know I definitely missed a class after spring break. When we could drink every night at Eisenhower Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some nights I got back and I
A few
wasn't going to
nights
make
you
it to
might have,
class.
you forgot to set the alarm.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Right.
but
I forgot to
yeah,
set the alarm. That's
yeah,
totally
yeah,
understandable. So 8 hours, you mentioned earlier that you were the training sergeant, so you got the guide on. So a pretty good lifestyle there. That's nice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We had a great time in G4. There was four of us that had a birthday within a day of each other too. So we'd always have our annual February 28th. So
Yeah.
Joe Whitlock, Chuck Williams, and Kim Warren and myself all
Yeah.
had. Kim's birthday was the 27th. So we'd always throw ourselves a little party every year. So that was
Yeah.
always pretty good. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And
And
another morning to forget to set the alarm, as they say. So,
exactly.
but so armor. Why armor? What was it that caught your attention for the armor branch?
Well, growing up where I did,
Mhm.
I was around heavy equipment since I was, a baby. Actually, my grandfather opened up Pigott and Son back in the 20s.
Ah.
Yeah. So we had dozers, drag lines, all this other
Oh
stuff.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, I want to, do tanks, a tracked vehicle and everything else, just like our dozers and our
Yeah.
drag lines and everything else. So I was kind of mechanically inclined, and of course I did enjoy, Fort Knox, when we went down there,
Yeah.
as cadets, and it was the thing I wanted to do, and I didn't realize how tight the M1 was going to be. But I started on the old dinosaur, the
I was
M60A1.
just going to mention you're you're physically
Yeah,
a mountain of a man fitting into a tank. I mean, that's there's some
yeah.
people that were hitting their heads and everything. They said they didn't want to do it, but you went for it anyway.
Well, when I got into the M1, I actually would have to stoop to close the commander's hatch.
I bet. Yeah.
But the M60A1, uh, was a pretty high
Yeah.
silhouette. So
Big turret, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But what's kind of interesting about being on the M60A1, there was only a few places that had that. So everybody on my tank crew from Fort Knox,
Right.
the officer basic, uh, came down to Fort Polk. So, we had like, instant friends at Fort Polk,
Right.
because we were all, on the same crew. So there was two of our classmates, and then one guy from Kentucky was our, four-man crew. And then we'd rotate through with Marines because they had the dinosaur tank,
Right.
and we had a Jordanian officer train with us every now and then because he was training on the M60A1 as well.
Right.
So so Knox was fun.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
then so Fort Polk, how did that selection come to you? Was that something that you just kind of
yeah.
got based on class rank, or was it something that was interesting to you because you're from the area?
Well, I will tell you, that's a pretty interesting story. My class rank wasn't that high, because you go to Fort Polk for sort of a reason and everything. But
Right.
but what really sold me on Fort Polk was, I don't know if you know Bill Walter.
I know
Uh,
it's been many years, but yeah, I know Bill Walton.
yeah,
Bill
so
Walton.
yeah, he was in G2. So the last year, we did Beast together. We were all in G Company. He was second platoon, I was fourth platoon.
Right.
Training and everything. So got to be real, and I was friends with Bill even before then. But yeah, so one day, Bill was me and him was talking everything. Maybe it was I call or something like that. He said, "Big Ed, come on down to Fort Polk with us." And I said, "Yeah,
And honestly, for a 21-year-old, you don't need any more than that. All
yeah,
right, I'm
yeah,
coming.
yeah, that's it." So Bill said that. So
That's
ended
great,
up
though.
having, yeah, yeah. And I saw your podcast with Bob Bullard, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, how your memory kind of fades and everything, and all of a sudden I was like, he started talking about Fort Polk, and I said, yeah, that's right. I see him in the old club all the time, you know, for lunch or whatever like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I ran across Bob quite a few, and then I lived in a New Lano development, and we had a bunch of West Pointers in there too,
Mhm.
classmates. So it was we had a pretty tight group there at Fort Polk. We
Yeah,
had
right?
yeah,
And you kind of
yeah,
gravitate together. That's great. Did you
yeah.
get a chance to hang out with Bill at all down there? Or because
Oh yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
you plan on going to a place and you go off in different directions.
No, actually, Bill lived around the corner,
Okay.
and Bobby Lockett
Yeah.
uh, lived in the same neighborhood. And
Yeah, yeah,
I remember going to Bobby Lockett's house for Christmas about 10 or 11 years ago,
yeah, yeah.
and my daughter, uh, I think she asked, "Was he the nice one or the other one?" And my wife, for whatever reason, did not like Bill, you know, but she loved Bobby. I said, "All right,
He's
yeah, this
he's
is the one
okay.
your
He's
mom
the
liked."
good
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
funny.
so, yeah, 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 yeah. And Bobby
But
Ness was on the
always
street.
it's always terrifying when your friend's kid comes in and asks the friend, "Is this the nice one?" and you don't know which one you are.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
but
Well,
yeah,
you mentioned your daughter, so you talk a little about your daughter because we always want to make sure the kids get mentioned on the podcast.
yeah. I
Um,
got two girls.
two girls. Okay.
Yep, yep. My oldest is living in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yep, and She started at Colorado State,
All right.
and she ended up at Boulder
Yeah.
with a speech pathology major,
Okay.
and then she went to grad school in Savannah, Georgia, Armstrong State. So
All right.
she's been doing travel assignments for speech pathology for since and I'll tell her she's 31. She's an old over the hill gal, So she's 31,
Yeah, that's
and she's been doing that. But her and her fiance is living in Brooklyn,
okay.
5 minutes walk from the Barclay Center. I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay.
so yeah. So I actually went up there and saw a WNBA game this summer and everything.
All right.
And yeah, and my youngest started at School of Mines, and then she went to CSU to finish up, and went into accounting. So she's working in a bank in Hampton, Virginia now.
Okay. Got it.
Yep. So they're both off the payroll, and
Well,
yeah,
sometimes
yep.
it
So
takes a while to get them off, but
yeah,
it
yeah.
sounds like
It's a great thing.
you did some good work there. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm proud of them. They're good girls. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
goodness.
So yeah,
And then, so 31. Yeah. So you were out of the army when they came along. My
yeah.
son's
I did.
31, so I remember my own
Yep.
timing there.
Yeah, actually, I got out, with the peace dividend and everything. I got out at 4 years,
Right.
So, yep. So I got out in '90, and my oldest was born in Rome, Georgia, in '93. So,
Okay. And so I saw on your LinkedIn you went out and did some work at the NTC and kind of had Jim Nicholas and those guys, running around with those silly Sheridans and all that. So you did that stuff from Fort Polk and all that. But what was the environment when you got out in 90, right? Uh,
'90.
kind of what was going on? They were encouraging everybody to get out.
Yeah, they were. And what I was going to say about that too is, I've been really blessed. West Point. I'm sorry, I'll stop shaking.
That's right.
But yeah, but my connections at West Point has always been helpful. So when I got out in '90, I went to a couple of the headhunter fairs and everything, and I you know, I was, looking at different jobs. And I don't know if you remember Bill Bassnett, but
I remember
Bill,
Bill. Yeah, absolutely.
and he was a big time military recruiter for Bradley Morris, and then he opened his own agency and
Is that
everything.
right? Okay.
Yeah. But back then, he was going to the headhunter shows with us,
Right.
and we ran across each other because after I got out, I moved to Atlanta, to look for a job around Atlanta. And I had two real promising interviews. One was with Bank of America, and it was a class of 75 guy who I interviewed with. So I got an offer from him. But then the other thing was when I was talking to Bill, Bill said, "Hey, I interviewed for this job. They wanted to hire me and everything." He said, "But it requires 6 weeks of training in Japan, and he's he had a baby on the way, so he said I'm not going
Can't
to
do
take
it.
it."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so he called and told him, "Hey, I got this West Point buddy of mine and everything." So anyway, I interviewed with the vice president. He
Yeah.
liked it. He said, "You got a passport?" I said, "Yep." He said, "Can you be on a plane in 4 days?" I said, "Yep." So I went to Japan for 6 weeks of training and everything, and that was my first job out of the Army, and it was all because of Bill Bassnett. So I was his first.
Well, thank you, Bill. Right. That's
Yeah, I know. I was his first military
you
placement.
were the very first one he placed.
Yes, because after he didn't take the that job, he went down as a manager at the Keebler factory
Yeah.
in Atlanta. They got this really big bakery down there
Yeah. Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
of Atlanta. So that's what he did, and then he went into the recruiting thing. But I was his first military hire recruit that he recruited. So
And you know
yes.
what? He got a taste for it after that, I guess. What an unusual placement. You went right into manufacturing, which I
Hmm.
think I'm just looking at classmates and talking to some of their experiences because the other types of jobs were more kind of in vogue back then. But a
Yeah.
very interesting job he landed there through Bill.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, truthfully, I know a lot of guys went into the sales, which West Pointers are always built, we're outgoing kind of people and everything,
Right.
and engineers. A lot of our classmates just love the technical side, and me, I like the technical side, but also I got so much satisfaction out of building stuff. So the company
Yeah.
I worked for, we actually made all the plate steel parts for excavator companies like Caterpillar,
Really?
Komatsu, Kobelco, Deere Hitachi. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Big stuff. Big
yeah,
facilities, right?
yeah. This guy's doing some land clearing over on my land
Yeah.
uh, here in Florida, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, that Komatsu, I said, I made all of those damn parts right there. It's like, you
Everything
know,
you're sitting on, I made. Yeah.
I did, yeah." And
I had
then,
a very brief stint in a large operation like that. It it's it's awe inspiring what human beings can create when you go into one of those big
mhm.
operations. The size of the machines and the things. It's pretty
Oh
amazing.
yeah,
So good for
yeah.
you.
It's just incredible.
And then
And then
I mean, we could spend an entire podcast on your resume. You went from manufacturing to manufacturing to manufacturing. Just kind of what's the summary story there of all these? So did you
okay.
specialize in a certain type of process or how did that work?
Um, Not so much. Most of it was metal and machine.
Yeah.
High precision machinery and fabrication kind of stuff. So yeah, the job in Georgia I absolutely loved, and I probably would have stayed there, but my wife at the time, it was a Japanese company, so she had like hardly any social life at all.
Right.
And then this opportunity to actually work for a competitor came up, and that's what got us to North Carolina.
Okay.
And I did not like working for the competitor too much, so I did that for a couple of years, and then I landed another great job that I absolutely loved. And I made the service station equipment, the gas pumps you see at the Exxon Mobil stations.
Sure. Yeah.
I think every gas pump at every Exxon Mobil station in the world is made by this company in
It's
Greensboro,
gone
North
through
Carolina.
one of their processes. Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Gilbarco was the company. We had 55% of the market share for gas pumps. So so we actually so I did that for about 11 years, and that was an outstanding job. But I ran the die casting and the tool room there. So
Okay.
and tool and die makers are, I mean, they're the greatest to work with. And unfortunately, we've really lost that skill set in America. You just don't get uh, apprenticeships for
Yeah. It's a
tool and die
very
makers.
hot topic.
Yeah,
I know
but
that people are going to be watching this podcast 100 years from now, but no, it's a very, but as of this date, it's a very hot topic. I was just
yeah,
hearing,
it
listening to a
really,
podcast on electronic warfare officers are actually back in fashion. So I was like, I was
uh-huh.
one of those 40 years
Yeah,
ago. Oh
yeah,
yeah. No,
yep,
no
yep,
kidding.
yeah. So
What, how
yeah.
many different manufacturing fads did you have to suffer through? Because you had Six Sigma and you had,
Hmm.
um, yeah,
Well,
Gold Rat's gold. You had all sorts.
yeah,
There was always some consultant coming up with a new way that you could get that tool and die room working better.
yep, yep. I well, um, I was very pleased with all the different companies I had. I finally left the Gilbarco job.
Yeah.
There was a buyout from another company, and I wasn't enjoying it. So uh, I gave my notice like in November or December, and I worked until the following June.
Okay.
I trained three replacements.
Yeah.
Because the guys were, after the new company bought out, there was a lot of people leaving and everything. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I trained three different guys to replace me when I left. But then I left in June after the girls got out of school, and we took a year off to go camping around the U.S.
Ah, wow.
at all the national parks. We bought a fifth wheel,
Yeah.
uh, an F-250, and we took off and went up to Bar Harbor, Maine, to Arcadia National Park, went across into Quebec, Montreal, Ontario, down through the Black Hills of South Dakota,
Right.
Olympia.
Well, given that
National,
your Facebook banner is a fifth wheel trailer right now, I think that's probably
yeah,
a passion of yours. I think that'd be
yeah,
safe to
and
say that, right?
yep, and everything you see behind you is part of my fifth wheel. So
Yeah.
I've actually been RV living since 2018.
See,
So
that's
yeah,
interesting. So you had this amazing career in manufacturing, all sorts of jobs that girls got through school, went out, and so you turned to RV living. Talk about that a little bit.
yeah, well, I actually when I first started RV living, my wife at the time was living in San Diego, or that's where my job was.
Yeah.
And I closed that facility down. And one of the reasons on my resume you see a lot of activity last few years is, I actually shut down some facilities, and this was
Okay.
an R&D company in San Diego. Uh, but when I shut that down, I actually got an RV and moved up to Mojave, California, and worked for a supplier to Boeing. We made components for Boeing's up there.
Okay.
So that's what got me into RV living. And then we decided to get out of California, and that's when I went back to Colorado.
Right.
And it was looking for a job there too. And I ended up working for a classmate. That's where my West Point connection comes in again. So I worked for Pat O'Connor for a couple years
Okay.
in Denver. Yeah. So and that's what got me up to Denver. But my wife, she was working in Pueblo,
Yeah.
so she was down there, and I was RV living up in um, was it Inglewood?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So or Sheridan. So yeah. So I was up there, and then I I stopped. Pat sold his business,
Uh huh.
and I found this other job making water turbines, also in Denver, and it was another R&D startup kind of situation, and I closed it down. And at that time I said, well, I'm not
So,
doing
do
any
you have
more.
a specialty in closing them down, or is it your
You know,
hopefully it's not your contribution?
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's like I'm
You're
the
the
kiss of death.
cooler, right?
It's like, yeah, I show up and everybody like, oh boy,
Oh boy.
it's
Oh
yeah,
boy.
it's
Get your
like,
cardboard boxes ready.
yeah,
Edgar's here.
yeah, 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 it was really disappointing. The Pueblo job that I had, I closed it down because I actually moved the whole operation to Monterrey, Mexico,
Yeah.
and I actually lived in Mexico for a year, uh,
Getting that set up
establishing,
down there. Yeah.
yeah. And then when I came back, I didn't have a job in Pueblo anymore, and I chose to make solar panels after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then solar panel, we were undercut by the Chinese,
Yeah.
in 2012. So, yeah, so I'm glad I always chose to go manufacturing, but it's been disappointing to see so much of the manufacturing leave this country. Almost to the point. I always think it's a national uh, defense issue. If you
Oh,
can't
it's
can't make
100%
stuff,
is. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, I ran a parallel path. This is I was shutting down internet operations and customer service to send them over to India and all the rest. So I was also part of the problem. So yeah, no,
yeah,
I watched it as well. It's all that skill and all that. And now suddenly we're concerned about it. So anyway,
yeah, and
that'll
rightfully
be the
so.
national defense part of our podcast. We'll go down that road when we get there, but.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But it gave you a good, a good set of experiences, and then
Hmm.
you retired. I mean, you stepped
Yeah,
back from all this, although you're doing a little bit with the hot shotting. Talk about that a little bit.
yeah. Well, I gave it a good shot. I had the big truck, from pulling my fifth wheel because
Yeah,
I have this really really big fifth wheel. So I said, you know what, I'll use this truck and do some hauling and everything. So I've done it for about 8 months and everything. But being on your retired but never quitting kind of
yeah.
podcast, I've started getting. I'm really thinking about coaching. After Rock.
Rock
Hearing
Marcone, yeah,
his
he's a
story.
guru.
Yeah, I heard his story, and then
Danny
of course,
Stredler, yeah, yeah.
yeah, Danny. And see what he's doing. So actually, I went to a basketball game last Monday. The team that our basketball team, when I was in high school, we actually won a state championship.
Wow,
We were really good, and the team here
and that's a big
forfeited
deal.
three.
Florida, I mean, that's
Yeah, we
yeah.
were we were dang good. You know, we won state the same year. You remember Derek Harper used to play for the Mavs.
I don't,
Uh,
but that's yeah, yeah,
yeah, he was. It was the year his team. I think his team won state at the other classification. So yeah, but we were a really good program and everything. But now this year they forfeited 3 games because the kids quit and didn't show up and everything.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm actually I'm really leaning toward giving coaching a try now.
yeah. Poke
But
your head in, see what happens, right?
yeah. So but I was going to say, especially if anybody's listening to the podcast, I recommend the Wednesday afternoon retired never going to quit podcast. I don't know if
Yeah,
I said
we get
that
together
right.
and talk about our projects and stuff. It's nice to have
Yeah,
you on there, and hopefully, yeah,
yeah.
coaching that's a good project.
Yeah. And it's something when I made the decision when we took that year off to go camping, I really gave it a lot of consideration to actually, get certified to teach and coach
Hmm.
there in North Carolina. And I don't know, I kept on chasing the money.
Well,
Yeah. So
it certainly is chaseable, isn't it? When it's sitting out there,
yeah, it definitely is. Oh,
you can find 20 reasons to chase it. That's for sure.
yep, definitely. And
uh,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
that's
another.
nice though. But being back in your hometown now, how does it work? RV living in your hometown? Is that they have
Mm,
facilities and what's that like?
Actually, I live at my sister's.
Okay,
Well, yeah. So it's actually the land that where my home was when I was growing up. So it's
no
right there.
kidding.
Yeah. So and actually, I'm actually at an RV resort that's in there, and they've got this really nice golf course and RV resort that's
Yeah,
like 2 miles away from my sister's.
yeah.
So I'm actually there for the next 2 months because I'm putting in this concrete pad with all the electrical and sewer hookups and everything
Yeah.
back on my land. So yeah, so I'm gonna have that set up, and then basically park it there, kind of reside there until I'm out, actually going places in my RV. Which again, you kind of motivated me on that too with your 60 for 60 or something
Hey,
like that. Yeah, yeah,
you
that
know
was
what? Just find those of us who have driveways.
yeah, exactly. It's like okay, what's
You
they
know,
call that
I
mooch
I
camping?
give you a list.
Yeah, all righty. I might take you up on that because mooch camping
Hey,
is way to go.
you
You
know,
know,
look, I highly recommend it. Eric Gaines, who he's doing a little bit of that himself. He's living a little bit of the van life and
hmm
staying with relatives and his kids and things. And
yeah,
there you go,
yeah,
man.
yeah. It's kind of it's been fun and everything. So yeah, I'm actually gonna head back at the end of this month. Um, Before I do another one, I'm gonna actually go back to Greensboro
Uh-huh.
and visit some friends up there. I've made some lifelong friends up around Greensboro, and I am going to start taking notes and everything and figuring out where all our classmates are and kind of link up with them, as I go past. So you're in South Carolina somewhere, so I'll get
Yeah,
all your
Myrtle
information.
Beach. There's plenty of places to pull your rig up here. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. We
Um,
used to camp at where what is it, Huntington Beach State Park?
what out in California?
No, no, it's right there in Myrtle. What's that
Oh,
one?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Down. Okay, you caught me.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. But yeah,
yeah.
there's
I think
all
it's
down in there.
Huntington.
There's all sorts
Yeah,
of nice resorts and stuff, and you come in if it's out of season a little bit, then you get some good prices there. And
yeah.
I tell you what, you could camp, you could set up here and run the whole coast here. We've got Will Dukes down in Paulie's, PJ Gross,
hmm
Charleston's a bunch of guys down there, a bunch of folks down
Yep.
there. You go up Georgia, you've got Augusta, you got Greenville, South Carolina. I mean, there's
Mm.
you could run the table here. It's a lot of great classmate connections here. So
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yes,
You
yeah,
get well, you
yeah,
get you and Eric at the same time. We all kind of create a little convoy.
yeah. That's it. Yeah, that would be fun.
61 for 61 convoy. There we go.
Yeah, that's it. Yep, yep.
That's great.
Yeah.
So looking back through your your past and kind of what you've done, pick any time in your past. What advice would you give yourself if you were to go back in time? And you can pick any time, any location, any type of advice. What advice would you give yourself?
You know, I often think about this. There's always this thing about the guys who either stayed in the army for 25,
Hmm.
30 years, or worked at a company for 25 or 30 years, and I probably would have stayed in the Georgia job, the Rome, Georgia job. I mean,
Right.
that was truly satisfying professionally and everything.
Yeah.
So I would say, um, you know, think about what's going to really make you happy, and then make the situation. Because everything around it was the problem. Rome, Georgia. Not
Right.
having a lot of access. Having given the wife, an alternative. To being stuck in what she felt trapped in Rome, Georgia, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So
That kind of stuff makes a big difference. And
yeah,
yeah, and your assessment of the situation. I hear you. Yeah. I've been
yeah.
there.
Yeah, and reading, that book also that you kind of we recommended on the pot or the
Yeah. John
Wisdom reading.
Reinbold suggested that book. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've got it on Audible now, so I'm listening to it now, and a lot of really great advice in there too. And that's probably the advice I would give myself. Then is like you know don't chase the money all the time. Do what really gives you a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment and everything else like that. So
Wise
that's
advice, right?
yeah, yeah, very, very much so. So I would say probably that because there was there was a couple of roles that I've had that I just truly enjoyed and everything. So that was probably it. Just know what you want,
Yeah.
and then fight
Yeah.
like hell to get it, and make it work. And I've had other people say that same kind of advice. Some people, it's locale that's the most important thing. And you find something to do. To make a living where you want to be.
Right.
And we've had a few classmates that I know did that. They planted themselves. They love their where they're at, and they chose a career path that enabled them to live like they wanted to. So,
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
I'm amazed at our classmates who work for one company for kind of 29 years or something like that, and because they treated them well and they had a great career path,
hmm
and
yeah,
you think that's out of date, but it really worked for them. So
yeah.
I
It really
think
did.
that's a version of that. It's great sound advice. The sound
Yeah,
advice. We
yeah. I've been pretty pleased with how everything's ended up. It
Yeah,
was like I got great kids. They talk to me occasionally.
that's
Yeah,
that's a that's a big one.
yeah,
My
yeah,
son talks
exactly.
to
Yeah,
me, so I figure I'm doing
yeah,
okay.
yeah, exactly. So now, but and now that I'm in this semi-retired state and everything, they can't get away from me. So
That's right. And you're mobile. So that that
exactly right.
RV, fifth wheel come rolling up at any time. So
Yeah, exactly.
they're going to take your call, or you'll come find out what's wrong.
And exactly. I'm gonna, it's like, and definitely gonna go to Brooklyn, because I love New York City,
Yeah, yeah.
and having a free room in New York City is a pretty sweet
Right.
deal. So,
That's the
yeah,
way I look at it. That's why we
yep,
had them, so we
yep,
get a free
exactly,
room out of it.
yeah, exactly, yep. So, yeah.
So when you thought about coming on the podcast, what was a story that really popped to mind that we haven't yet talked about? What, like when you say, "Oh, I want to tell a story about X, Y, or Z." What story haven't we covered?
Oh, let me see. I wrote down a few things. Let
Yeah,
me
yeah, yeah.
let me let me let me look at my list and everything. Well, you think you might remember Mike Endress. He passed.
Yep.
A few years back.
Captain
Uh,
IROC.
yep, yep. He was my plebe roommate.
Oh, really?
Him and
Okay.
Jim Yance and everything, and those guys were, they were great roommates. Jim Yance actually went to Drexel a year or two prior to going to West
Okay.
Point, and his professor was Anton, the author of the calculus book.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was his professor down at Drexel, and so Jim got me through calculus. I mean, so it was he was great. But my Mike Endress story was Mike used to ride me nonstop about my accent. You know, and
Well,
I mean he's from Jersey, right? So
yeah.
I'd always ask him which exit, and so there's two stories of Mike Endress stories. So one was at a tailgate. His girlfriend came up with his parents, and like I'd been asking him what exit, which you
Yeah.
always ask the Jersey guys at,
Right.
and then he was like, "I live in Mountain Lakes, and it's a beautiful place, and all this other stuff." And I was like, "Okay, Mike, but
You
which
can't be
exit?"
from New Jersey and be defensive. Come on, Mike.
Yeah, that's right. And I said, but I'd always ask him. And anyway, his girlfriend was there, and then I said, "Hey, which exit do you live on?" And he
Yeah.
heard it, and before he could stop her, she told me the exit off the Garden State and the Parkway. And I was like, "Uh huh,
My
yeah,
wife's from New Jersey.
yeah,
They
yeah."
can't
So,
escape it, and they shouldn't even
yep,
try. That's funny.
yeah, and then,
He
but the
tried so
funniest,
hard to talk
yeah,
about the beautiful New Jersey countryside, and you got him.
but the funniest thing about him though was he would ride me so much about my accent, and then um, it was during the plebe year, the
Yeah.
first semester finals, and he was grabbing his books and everything,
Yeah.
and I said, "Hey, Mike, where you going?" And he said, "I'm a fixin'," and I'm a fixin', and he
Mhm.
stopped, and his eyes got real big. He
Mhm.
said, "Damn it." I done wore off on him. I done wore off on him and everything. So it was funny. 'Cause,
Well, that just
yeah,
means you're a good influence.
yeah. So Yeah, it probably
That's
paid off.
terrific.
Whenever he got stationed down south, he could fit right in.
That's
So,
right. After he just,
yeah,
yeah, that's terrific.
yeah, yeah,
Sorely
but
missed, Mike.
yeah, he was a great
Sad
guy.
that he was taken from us early.
I know he was
So
a great
that's
guy. Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
so fun, man. It's great catching up. I really appreciate the fact that we've reconnected, and we've got
yeah,
to get you up here to South Carolina, and on your way up to Brooklyn to check in on
yeah,
to check in and make sure that free bedroom is still available. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
super
definitely.
stuff. Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh man, I had a great time.
All right,
Hey, thanks for doing this.
all right. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Courage Never Quits podcast, where any member of the class of 1986 who is willing to tell their story will be a guest. To get the word out and stay up to date on the latest episodes, hit the like and subscribe button. With over 900 living graduates, we have a lot of stories to tell, and you don't want to miss any of them. We'll see you in the next episode.